add people who are going to add revenue to the business so that they pay for themselves and create some surplus for others. Once you figure out how to get some people in place, you want to hire a manager to manage those people so that you get even further away from it. So you give the strategic direction for where people are going to go or where they should be. And then you move upstream so that you can focus on other things, right? And then you move to exit 4, where there's multiple departments, there's multiple.
Hello. Welcome to another knowledge bomb episode of Lead to Greatness, where we believe in helping others reach their greatest potential and together change the world. Today on Lead to Greatness, we have Jerome Myers. And if this is your first time, don't forget to subscribe. Hit that like button, hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of these amazing episodes. And if you're on iTunes, go ahead and rate the podcast and leave a review. That helps get the word out to great leaders and entrepreneurs like yourself. Jerome is an award-winning engineer-turned-business strategist. Jerome uses his rich experience and innate understanding of human emotions to ensure that your journey from the corporate world to entrepreneurship is a fulfilling one. Jerome's insights and success stories has been featured in media outlets such as Business Insider, Black Enterprise, Entrepreneur, Biz Now, and on television networks like CBS, ABC, and Fox. Please help me welcome Jerome with Mastering the Startup Game.
Cedric Francis, and you're listening to Lead to Greatness.
I started at the end of my corporate career where I built a $20 million division for a Fortune 550 company. I started on January 13th. I was employee number 2. And by the end of September, we had 175 employees. End of the year, 30% profit margin. So that translated to about $6 million of bottom line. On December 24th, at 4:55, I get a phone call from the guy I reported into, and he said, "Hey man, I made a decision. We're going to lay half the team off." And I said, "No, we're not. That's not the right answer." He said, "Yeah, we are. And this isn't a discussion. You and I have been going back and forth about this for the past few weeks. And I'm just calling it for me that I've made a final decision. And I'm stubborn, Cedric. So I said, no, that's not the right answer. We're going to figure this out. We're going to need those people in the new year." And he said, "Jerome, you can either be a part of this or not, but what we're doing is laying the folks off." And he said, "I'm going to go spend the rest of the year with my family. I'll talk to you in the new year." And he ended the call. And so I spent that week figuring out who stayed and who went. And I didn't sleep. I didn't eat much. And it was a really interesting experience for me. I call it traumatic, even though most people would probably say that it's not. Because, you know, these things happen pretty much every year all over the world. Yeah. But for me, it was my first time being in the seat as the Axeman. It was my first time being impacted, and not because I was losing my job, but because I was the one telling people they had to find another way to feed their family. Mm-hmm. And that for me was something that changed the way I thought about work and leadership completely. And so we put Humpty Dumpty back together again, and we got to the end of the next year. It was Thanksgiving this time, and I saw the same thing coming. So I'm standing in front of the group. I said, "Hey guys, don't spend all your money on Black Friday. I don't know what happened between here and the end of the year." And I just felt all my leadership credibility oozing out on the floor. Yes. Right? It just felt like I was melting in front of the room. And, you know, they kind of shrugged their shoulders, said, "Hey, thanks for the heads up," etc. But I knew that I couldn't stay in corporate. The thing that I realized over those 11 months was this. I'd given up all my agency. I'd given up my belief that I had a choice. And that was the last time that I decided that I wasn't going to be able to make a choice for what I participated in or did not participate in. Uh-huh. And so that led me on this journey of building a multi-million-dollar real estate portfolio, and then transitioning into coaching, or really guiding folks who are business leaders and figuring out what's next. Because I think all of us are on some level of transformation. We've identified 8 exits that founders go through. And depending on where they are, we help them understand how they're going to get from where they are to where they want to go.
Listen, that's someone on Lead to Greatness right now that's probably at that point where they are ready to pull the plug, and they're just doing what they don't like to do, living how they don't like to live, going to work, sitting in the car. I want you to speak to yourself or talk about what went on through that phase, and maybe some of the mistakes or some of the things that I wish I would have did it differently, or I'm glad I did it the way I did.
Yeah, I did everything wrong. So the way I did it isn't the way to do it. But what I would tell the person who's on the way to work or thinking about making a transition is this. Your dreams should be real. And it may have been a long time since you heard something like that. Most people stop saying that to you when you're 8 to 10 years old, and they're telling you can be anything you want to be and so on and so forth. And there's a transition through the teenage years where they tell you to be realistic, to do something practical, to be predictable, to do something that has a high likelihood of success. And I will tell you that's the fastest way to be mediocre. And so if you look back to when you decided what you wanted to be, and it might be when you were 7, it might be when you were 15, it might be when you're 20, and it could be tied to an event. It could be somebody dying. It could be somebody getting a divorce. It could be somebody having a child. It doesn't really matter when you decided who you were going to be. The question is that person that you decided to be serving you right now? And if you know for a fact, right, you just go feel deep down in your soul. If you haven't been there in a while, it's there. If you go there and you know without a shadow of a doubt that that person that you aspire to be, that you've been chasing, or the person that you caught isn't who you're supposed to be, then you have a moral imperative to do something different. It's not okay to use I have a family or I have people counting on me as an excuse for why you don't do your thing. Whatever that thing is, because we've all been placed here to do something very specific. We're all here on a mission, whether we know it or not, whether we're consciously pursuing it or not. You're here, you're on a mission. You've been placed here to do something very unique and special for the world. In fact, there's somebody who you haven't met who's counting on you to do the thing that you've been placed here to do so that they can build on the back of it. And you're literally, when you're not walking in your purpose and you're not being in purpose, you're preventing that from happening. And so if you're not selfish enough to do it for you, then you need to do it for the other people around you. You need to get rid of the fear. You need to get rid of all the excuses, and you need to step up and be the person that you want to be. Because here's the thing that I learned, and it's probably the only thing that I got right. Your gifts will always make room for you. It doesn't matter how many mistakes you make. It doesn't matter if you truly understand how to get it done. And all that you have to do in order to achieve success eventually is be directionally correct. And I'll give you an example of that before I step down off the soapbox. Let's say that you're in a space or a place where he asked me where I am. I sit in Greensboro, North Carolina when I'm in the country, right? And so I'm in Greensboro and I know that I want to go to California, but I don't have the address. Now, I can start driving from Greensboro on I-40 because it runs all the way to the other coast. And then maybe when I get halfway across the country, I might need to deviate if I'm going to Northern California. But if I'm going to Central California, I can keep going. And as long as I'm directionally correct, Cedric, I am making progress towards the thing. And guess what will happen as I get closer? It'll be unveiled to me, the next part. And so maybe I just need to know the city. I don't need to know the street or the house number at this point. I need to know California. Now I need to know the city. Then I might need to know the street. Then I need to know the address. I don't need any of that other information to get started. I just need to know that I'm heading to California.
Knowledge. Boom. This is so great because I think that's some of our problems is just getting started.
There's only 2 resources that I think most people have to allocate on a daily basis, and it's their time and their money. I think there are so many people who decide that their money is more precious than their time. But here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, you don't get to replenish your time. From the moment you were born, every moment that you live, you're closer to the end. The great part about this for some people is you don't know when the end is. The great part of this for other people is you don't know when the end is. And so you literally have this countdown timer that is running.
Let's talk about founders exit paradox. What is it and how did it come to fruition?
Yeah. So when people typically walk out of corporate, they think they're going to see what they see on social media, that entrepreneurship is private jets, vacations all the time, working when they want, and the exotics, the Lambos, the Ferraris.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, when they get their big idea, they are going to go and search and look for some of those things. But the reality is that when you walk out, more often than not, you're chief everything officer. And so you trade your 9 to 5 in for a 5 to 9. And that's the first exit of a founder. And that requires a different person. There's no more walking out of the office and say, oh, it's not my problem, I'm gone. You're thinking about it every hour of every day. Yeah. You're sleeping, you're thinking about it. You're washing your car, you're cutting the grass, you're doing dishes. You're thinking about how you're going to make this thing be successful. Yeah. Now, I won't talk about all 8 of the exits that we identified, but that's the first one. I'll jump to exit number 6 because it's the one most people fantasize about. And it's the exit where you get the payday. It's the one where you get the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. You sell to a venture capital firm, you IPO, an initial public offering. You sell the company to the employees through an ESOP. You do something that creates a liquidity event that gets you sent a check or a wire that has more money in it than you've ever seen in your life, especially in your bank account.
Yeah.
And when this one happens, people usually fall off a cliff. Literally. They lose their identity. And we break it down into 6 centers of doubt. They lose their identity because they've put so much time, effort, and energy into building the enterprise. Yeah. They start questioning the relationships that are around them. You'll see divorces, you'll see estranged kids, you'll see a bunch of different things. And in addition to that, they lose all of their friends because the majority of them were tied to the business in some way, shape, or form, or adjacent to the business in some shape or form. Yeah. Then they go up to, well, I sold my job. What am I doing for work now? And what does that mean? Because I can't introduce myself as the owner of this or senior vice president of that. And this is that senior vice president thing happens when they exit corporate America and go to the first exit. And then exit 4 is around health. So what you'll see with a lot of entrepreneurs is they gain weight because the weight is the defense mechanism for all the stress. Right. And once you can release the stress, then things start to shift. But you'll see them gain weight and then you'll start seeing them cut it off. And so it's like, well, did I give up all of my health to acquire this wealth that I have? And will I have to give up my wealth in order to get my health back? The 5th one is about prosperity. So I've gone from allocating thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars to allocating what is personally mine now. And it's more than I've ever had to allocate. Yeah. It's a different skill set than running the business. In addition to that, what do you do with your time? Because prosperity for us is time, talent, and treasures. Yeah. And then you have these talents. What organization or what cause or movement do you lend them to? Because it's no longer locked into this enterprise that you've been building. And then the 6th center of doubt is significance. And so you'll hear about legacy. You'll hear about my life having meaning. But the question that I like to ask folks when they come to us is, who would carry your casket? Because you need 6. Yeah. And they never have an answer. They're like, well, I hope my family or maybe my kids, but they don't ever have the names figured out. And so then I elevate it and say, what if people were fighting to carry your casket because they felt like that was the greatest way that they could serve you and honor you? How would that feel? And so all of that stuff is packed into the founder's exit paradox. And the cherry on top is them just trying to answer this one question: what now? In each level, each exit, you experience some piece of the founder's exit paradox, where it's like, okay, what do I do now? Or what's next? And most people don't have the answer, and they struggle with it because, one, they're anchored or tied into that old identity, or they're scared to envision what their new identity could be because they don't feel like they're qualified.
What are some lessons that you learned from running your own business?
I did everything wrong. So I walked out of corporate with a year's worth of expenses and savings and no clients, no marketing plan, no real proof of concept. And for a year, I didn't make any money. In fact, all the money was going the wrong way. I decided that I was going to pursue a real estate vision dream that I had from college, and got turned down at every juncture because I didn't understand what I was doing. And then that turned into me doing a different part of real estate investing, but that took a really long time. And so it took a year for me to finally get revenue. In fact, I think it was more than a year before I got the first real payday. And so what I would tell people is proof your concept. Sell one, because that first sell is the hardest sell. Sell one of the things that you want to do on the backside. And anybody out there who thinks I'm going to be an entrepreneur, but I don't have to sell, you're mistaken. Unless you have a lot of money to be able to pay a salesperson to figure things out for you in the beginning. The only issue with that is you're going to be the first person that's able to articulate what you're doing. You're going to be the person who understands the problem better than anybody else. And so in your conviction on your company's ability to solve whatever problem the client has is the thing that sells it the first time, because you don't have any results. You don't have any testimonials. You don't even really have any proof. And so that would be it. Know what you're going to sell and then prove that you can sell it, so that you don't get out and you're walking around in circles trying to figure out what you're going to sell and how you're going to sell it. If you're not known for solving a problem, then how can people get referred to you? So I think the first thing that was difficult was figuring out what I was selling, because I hadn't seen what I was selling offered anywhere. And I didn't know how to boil it down to a specific problem. So what we're looking for, and I think this will help everybody out there, including myself, what you're looking for is the ability to convey the message of the problem you solve in the fewest words without people needing additional context in order to get it. They need to get it right away. This makes you more referable. This makes people unconfused or not confused, or keeps them from being confused. And that in and of itself will unlock so many doors. People want to start a bunch of different businesses and they want to have a whole lot of products. If you're not making $1 million and you got 7 products, you're probably doing the wrong thing. Anytime I hear somebody talking about they got 5 or 6 businesses and they're not doing millions of dollars in revenue, I know for a fact that they're doing all those different businesses because nothing's working. And nothing's working because nobody knows what you do. Or they don't think you can do all those things well. And the other piece of this was, I had a couple of different things going. I was trying to be the CEO of multiple companies. In particular, it was like, I'm being a CEO of a real estate company. I'm being a CEO of a leadership development, a coaching company. And those two things deserve their own CEOs. And so how do you grow a multi-million-dollar business if you're only in it part-time? And so when we go back to the 8 exits, the first 5 are really about getting you out of the day-to-day. And so your chief everything officer, for multiple 7-figure businesses, it just doesn't make sense. It's not something that's practical. All right. So then we go to the next exit, which is you have some people who are doing production work for you. right? And in that production work, things are getting done without you having to do all of them.
Yeah.
I encourage people to always do that with revenue generating tasks. Some people are like, oh, I need an administrative assistant. Well, that's just more burden on the business. They're not making you money. Add people who are going to add revenue to the business so that they pay for themselves and create some surplus for others.
Yeah.
Then once you figure out how to get some people in place, you want to hire a manager to manage those people so that you get even further away from it. So you give the strategic direction for where people are going to go or where they should be. And then you move upstream so that you can focus on other things, right? That is exit 3. And then you move to exit 4, where there's multiple departments, there's multiple managers, and you hire a manager for your managers. We call this the chief operating officer. And so that gets you out of the day-to-day. And right there, Cedric, maybe then possibly, potentially, you can go start another business or focus on scaling up a business. The next level from there is when you actually get out of the business and then you go to what we call the board of directors. And this allows you to distance yourself from it. And, this timeline sounds like it's quick. And for some people, maybe it is, if you're doing like software as service or some other thing where you're productizing it and you don't have to build the product yourself. But for the service-based entrepreneurs out there where you're selling your intellectual property, you're selling your problem-solving capability, this may take longer. And so the goal here is to move people through so they can become chairman of the board. And when they get there, now they can take their focus off of the day-to-day operations of the business and focus on other things. The ability to go from I'm doing a whole bunch of things and I'm trying to sound really important and I have all these people working for me when it's just me, and actually moving through the space of creating an environment where you're building a business profitably. Because, there's a whole lot of people on Inc. 5000 and Inc. 500 who aren't profitable, right? They're just running revenue through ads and so on and so forth, but they're not actually making any money. You got to be careful with that, because I think growing profitably is the thing that will keep you in business for the long run. So there's a shorter book. There's an ebook that's coming that's actually focused on helping founders figure out what's next. Right. And that's probably going to be the title when we finish it up, is What Now or What Next. Then we're working through the process of getting a major publishing company to publish a book solely focused on the 8 exits and how people move through those. They navigate entrepreneurship, because we haven't seen a framework for how companies grow. Right? People are out here willy-nilly trying to figure out how to piece the thing together. And what we want to do is give them the roadmap that says you're here and here's your next gate to walk through. And if we can do that, we think people are going to be much more successful. And maybe we can do something to reduce the failure rate of so many small businesses.
This is great. I'm definitely looking forward to it. You just dropped some gems and you just shared some great information. And I know some listeners right now listening like, man, I wrote some of the things down. I want to know more. How do they get into that and learn more about what you're doing, learn more about the founders exit paradox? I mean, how do they get into that?
Yeah. So they should go to the exitparadox.com, and there they can do a couple of things. But what we're giving away to your audience is a couple of different white papers. One is the 5 mistakes that every founder makes when they exit. And then there's another one that's more in detail, and it goes into the founder's exit paradox and the 8 exits, and really breaks down for people what to expect as they transition from one level of entrepreneurship to the next. And the goal there is to make them know that they're not alone, to let them know that what they're going through is normal, because then they can get help, because they don't feel the shame associated with it. One of the other things I wanted to get to the listeners, because I know podcast listeners listen to podcasts. And so we've got the Dreamcatchers podcast. We share the stories of folks who have exited. And the goal here is to help people, one, understand what an exit looks like, because so many people don't even know that you can buy and sell businesses. And then 2, make them aware of all of the things that may negatively impact the experience that they have on the backside of the exit. So the podcast is called Dream Catchers, and we interview people who have caught their dreams, man.
What are some practical leadership growth tips, tool, advice that you can share with the Lead to Greatness community to help us reach our greatest potential?
Yeah, the thing that I think is most profound to me as I've been on this development journey for over 20 years now is the company's never going to grow bigger than the leader. It's the concept of the leadership led. And so if your company isn't growing, I hate to tell it to you, but you're the reason why. You haven't grown your capacity to the place where you can attract other people who are going to grow it, or you haven't grown your capacity where you're able to actually steer the ship at that level. And so it's my belief that every leader should be developing themselves on a daily basis, and they should be making a significant financial investment as well. I'm going through a financial literacy course because that's one of the things that is really important for me. And we did an audit. In the last 10 months, we've spent $200,000 on development for me personally, right? And so if you're not making $200 of investment, because you can get books, right? Or you can listen to books if you don't want to turn pages, or you can go to these seminars, or you can go, if you're not educating yourself, you are going to be the reason why the business isn't successful. And if you say, oh, well, I got so much work to do, I can't enrich myself, I implore you that you're spending your time on the wrong things. Because the biggest return on investment you're ever going to get is an investment that you make in yourself, especially as an entrepreneur.
Knowledge bomb. Thank you. And this is really great information that you share with the Lead to Greatness community. And all the information will be in the show notes. On behalf of the Lead to Greatness community, I want to thank you so very much for taking time out of your busy schedule and adding value to us all.
I'm grateful for the opportunity, man. Thanks for having me.
We want to thank you for joining us today on the Lead to Greatness podcast. So remember, if you help others reach their greatest potential, together we can change the world. Peace.